Right, thanks, Arthur. The miracle of modern travel. You just get into that car, throw your stuff in the boot, away up the A9, follow the signpost, and you're here. How different when I came to the Highlands first, on an old bike, which I bought for 2 and 6. It was a real rough ride, but I got here. It was a place I'd always wanted to come to, but there was none of this that's around me now. What I saw was a lonely piece of wild country. But it was very different from another man who travelled here and had it even rougher, Bonnie Prince Charlie, who here fought the last major battle in Britain at Culloden.
Try to imagine the scene. From the right of the line, the Athol Brigade, the Camerons, the Stuarts of Appin, the Frasers, Clan Catton, McLaughlin, the Farquharsons, Chisholm, the Clan Ranald, Kepach MacDonnell, Glengarry MacDonnell.
And if they had managed to make the Highland charge, I think they'd have broken through. It was the worst place possible for a Highland battle. The Highland army didn't have the equipment. They had very little good cavalry. They had a few worn-out horses. They didn't have the cannons. And worst of all, the troops were hungry. All they had was hope, because the Highland army had never lost a battle. But even today, there's a kind of atmosphere, a kind of gloomy atmosphere, maybe because of the trees. People who knew it long ago said it was the most impressive of battlefields because of the feeling of space and a kind of overwhelming melancholy. I think what you can say of Culloden is that it was a battle fought out of honour. Charlie, Bonnie Prince Charlie, was the son of a king. William Augustus was the son of a king. They were both the same age, 24 years of age when the campaign started, 25 when the battle was fought. And I suppose Charlie came to this stone in order to see how things were going. Try to visualise that hectic half an hour or so when the main battle was fought, with the cannons bursting, cavalry charging, men falling dead, and the prince, when he saw that all was lost, he headed away with 1 or 2 others towards the Nairn Valley, riding towards the west to the rough bounds of Knoydart. Gothic. And when the prince saw this house, I imagine he was gay pleased, because he'd been in the saddle for something like 25 miles, and he knew in that house he might get some refreshment and maybe some news as well, because Lord Lovat was in hiding there. If it's true that Lovat said to the prince to remember his ancestor, Bruce, who had fought 11 times before he won independence for Scotland at the 12th attempt, then it must have been cold comfort for the prince riding through this bleak country that day of April. It had been impressed upon him that he would have to go west. The army was broken up. They didn't even have a rendezvous. And I believe he mingled tears with his wine. And then apparently there was news that some dragoons were on their way, so that you leave in a hurry. From the heights, the prince's party swept down to the top of Loch Ness at Fort Augustus, and then they turned away round Lahoich for Invergarry Castle, standing in the Raven's Rock. They expected to find something there, maybe food, shelter, fire, get a rest, but instead they found the place completely deserted. Nothing. 2 o'clock in the morning, they must have been utterly weary after 16 hours in the saddle. And at breakfast time, they had a stroke of luck, because they had a wee man with them called Ned Burke, a man from North Uist, and he went down to the water, found 2 salmon in a stake net, so that a great boil up, and with the bannocks, a good breakfast. And they rested here until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then set off down the western side of Loch Lochy. to turn up towards Loch-Arkaig through the Dark Mile. They went riding up along that long loch, 12 miles of narrow water, but at the head of the Dark Mile is Achnacarry House, and that was the house of Lochiel. And there is a Lochiel still living there, Sir Donald Cameron of Lochiel. And without Cameron of Lochiel, there would have been no Jacobite rising.
He, unfortunately, was exiled with Prince Charlie, and so never came back after 1746. But as you say, there are a lot of stories about him which have been handed down from generation to generation, or which in our family archives. For example, we have just outside this window the Beech Avenue, which consists of beeches which the gentle Lochiel, as he was known, was going to use to plant an avenue towards Fort William. Well, when he heard Prince Charlie landed, he shooked in these young beeches into a trench alongside the river. And his intention then was to tell the prince that there was no future for him, as he had no arms, no men, no money, and that he should go back and wait till he had better resources for invading the country. But of course he was won over, as everyone knows, by the charm of Prince Charlie and by the duty he felt towards his house, and never came back. So these trees have grown up in this trench in the way that he would plant them then. Therefore they're very close together. They're about 250 years old. Some of them have blown down, but they're there to this day as the trees which he himself had put in 1745. We do treasure the relics we have of the gentle Lochiel and of his time. We got a lovely sword made by the best sword maker of his time, Walter Allen of Stirling. We've got his pistol made by a very good pistol maker, Campbell of Doon. We've got his targe, as you say, with bullet holes in it, with Fiergard, Honour the King, on the targe. We've got various other relics of him, snuff mulls and that sort of thing. We've got a very nice gun made in France belonging to Prince Charles himself, which was left to my grandfather by Lord Elcho. We treasure all these relics, and I wish there were more. And I like to think that his peaceful exploits are also remembered by his descendants. There was a story about how when the Highland Army was coming back from Glasgow, and Prince Charlie demanded clothes and money and so on from the city, and they were very loath to give it to them. And so Prince Charlie said, "We'll sack the city." And Lochiel, true to his more kindly disposition, prevented the city from being sacked, persuaded Prince Charlie not to sack them. And as a tribute to him for saving the city, they've said that the bells of the toll booth will be rung whenever Lochiel or his descendants came to the city of Glasgow. And they've been rung to this day, 3 times in my own lifetime they've been rung, in memory of his saving the city from being sacked. My great ambition is to retain as much of the Cameron lands as possible, and certainly this house and this part of the lands, to be a focus for the clan, to be a place where they can come and call on their chief, where they can come and look and see where their ancestors lived, to be a centre for the clan throughout the world. I think it's terribly important. So my great ambition, and my son feels the same way, is to retain this place as the centre of the clan lands. And I feel to be Lochiel, be the 19th, to be the 26th chief of the clan. Gentle Lochiel was the 19th. I'm the 26th chief of the clan. It's a great responsibility, a great privilege, and something one is very proud of.
It's good to know that Loch-Arkaig and so much of the wild Cameron lands are still under Lochiel, himself a distinguished soldier, and much loved in the Highlands, as was